On February 19, 1945, the United States Marine Corps launched what would become one of the bloodiest and most unforgiving battles in American military history: the invasion of Iwo Jima, a tiny volcanic island barely 8 square miles in size, fortified by miles of tunnels and thousands of deeply dug-in Japanese defenders. An island that Admiral Nimitz would later describe with the unforgettable words, "Uncommon valor was a common virtue." Among the tens of thousands of Marines who stormed that black sand beach was a young man from Missouri, a man very few people today remember, though his actions stand among the greatest displays of courage ever witnessed in the Marine Corps. His name was Corporal Darrell S. Cole, a quiet, determined Marine who had already escaped death more times than most soldiers ever would, and who on Iwo Jima performed a one-man assault so staggering that even his own unit struggled to believe it. This is the forgotten story of the lonely gunner, the real-life Marine who refused to fall back, refused to give up, and refused to let hell break him. Darrell Samuel Cole was born on July 20, 1920. In Flat River, Missouri, a small mining community where life was simple and work was hard. He was the third of 10 children, a quiet, thoughtful boy who preferred working with his hands to getting into trouble. He wasn't a natural fighter, he wasn't the loudest kid, and he wasn't the kind of young man most people would imagine charging through explosions in one of the deadliest battles of the war. But after Pearl Harbor, everything changed. Cole enlisted in the Marine Corps not because he loved fighting, but because he believed it was his duty. He joined as a bugler, a musician, not a machine gunner, but he wanted to be something more, something dangerous, something that mattered, and so he applied to become a machine gunner. He was denied. He applied again, denied again. But during the brutal fighting on Bougainville, Cole found himself carrying, firing, repairing, and ultimately depending on machine guns under real combat conditions. He proved himself through fire long before the Marine Corps allowed him to officially change his role. By the time he fought on Saipan and Tinian in 1944, he was no longer a bugler. He was a machine gunner, and a highly respected one. On Saipan, he survived a grenade blast that destroyed his gun and wounded him with shrapnel. He refused evacuation and kept fighting with a rifle. On Tinian, he stepped into roles abandoned by men who were killed around him. But despite his bravery, Cole remained quiet, almost invisible in official histories. In letters home, he downplayed everything. To his mother, he wrote a line that would later haunt his family after Iwo Jima: "If anything happens to me, I want you to know that I am not afraid." On the morning of February 19, 1945, Cole landed with his unit on the black volcanic sands of Iwo Jima. For the Marines who survived that landing, the first memory they often shared was the sand. It wasn't like any beach they'd ever seen. It was thick, black, sharp, and hot. It swallowed boots like mud and provided zero cover. Machine gun fire poured down from hidden positions on Mount Suribachi. Mortars exploded with a dull, sickening thump. The air was filled with sulfur and smoke. Marines were cut down as they ran, as they crawled, as they tried to dig into sand that simply refused to protect them. Amid this chaos, Cole kept moving forward, carrying his weapon and his gear through a landscape that seemed designed to kill every man who dared step foot on it. His unit was soon pinned down by a deadly system of interlocking Japanese bunkers, pillboxes with narrow firing slits connected by trenches and tunnels. These fortifications were nearly impossible to destroy without a coordinated assault. But something happened that day that changed everything. The men who operated the machine gun with Cole were either killed or too wounded to continue. He was suddenly alone, one Marine, against a web of fortified positions pouring fire onto his platoon, and instead of falling back, Cole advanced. With grenades and explosives strapped to his body and a rifle in hand, he charged the first Japanese bunker. Bullets tore the sand around him. He slid behind a ridge of black ash, pulled a grenade, and lobbed it through the firing slit. The bunker went silent. He moved to the next, then the next. Marines behind him watched in disbelief as Cole stormed bunker after bunker, each time sprinting through exposed ground where any other man would have been killed instantly. He cleared the second, then the third, then the fourth. He was a one-man battering ram, smashing through the Japanese Japanese defensive line by sheer will fury and absolute commitment to saving the Marines pinned behind him. He reached the 5th bunker, then the 6th, then the 7th, each time destroying the defenders with grenades or demolition charges. He moved with precision, speed, and a calmness that his fellow Marines later described as surreal. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. One man doing the work of an entire squad. When he prepared to attack yet another bunker, Cole realized he had run out of grenades. He could have sheltered in place. He could have waited, but he didn't. Instead, he sprinted back through open fire to resupply. Marines shouted for him to get down, to stop, to wait, but Cole ignored them. He grabbed fresh grenades and ran back toward the Japanese bunkers as fast as he could, determined to finish what he had started. As he approached the next pillbox, a Japanese soldier suddenly emerged. Cole reacted instantly, drawing his pistol and firing a perfect shot, dropping the enemy before the man could lift his weapon, and then Cole charged the bunker. He ran the last 10 yards with bullets whipping past him. The defenders inside realized he was coming and opened fire. The ground exploded with ash, and then, in an instant, a Japanese grenade detonated directly in front of him. The explosion killed Darrell Cole immediately. He died in the open, facing the enemy, charging forward even in his final second of life. But his death was not the end of his impact. By destroying the 7 bunkers he attacked alone, Cole had shattered a major portion of the Japanese defensive line. His actions opened a gap that allowed his company, and the companies beside them, to advance. Many Marines survived that day because of him. Military historians have since written that without Cole's one-man assault, the line would have stalled and the casualties would have soared. Cole's body was later recovered, and his commanders quickly realized the scale of what he had accomplished. His Medal of Honor citation reads like a scene from a war film, except every word is true. He died destroying enemy fortifications, saving fellow Marines, and demonstrating bravery almost impossible to comprehend. When the telegram reached his family, his mother struggled to accept it. In interviews years later, she said she always believed God had kept him alive through Sapien and Tinian for a purpose, though she never imagined that purpose would be fulfilled in a few minutes of unbelievable courage. On Iwo Jima, of the 70,000 Marines who fought there, nearly 7,000 were killed. Among them was a quiet young man from Missouri who once played the bugle, and who died as one of the most courageous Marines in history. Despite his heroism, few Americans know his name today. A U.S. Navy destroyer, the USS Cole, was later named in his honor, a ship that would itself become famous decades later. Most Americans who know of the USS Cole have no idea that its namesake was a Marine who died charging a bunker on Iwo Jima. Cole's story matters because it is a reminder of what ordinary men are capable of when placed in extraordinary circumstances. He was not the strongest Marine, not the most famous, not the highest ranking, but in his final moments, he displayed courage so absolute that it defies explanation. He stood alone on the black sands of Iwo Jima and fought for his brothers until his last breath. And that is why, even though history often forgets the quiet heroes, we must remember the name Darrell S. Cole, the lonely gunner of Iwo Jima,